Well, there's two ways you could look at tonight's Golden State Warriors loss, second half of a back-to-back. On one hand, you could look at this as incredibly optimistic, incredibly stoked, because the future is damn bright. Both Kuminga and Podziemski scoring career highs. That's huge. But on the other hand, you look at the veterans, you look at the coaching, and it's discouraging. It's nonsensical. So highs and lows are the theme of tonight's show. We'll break it down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use the code Locked On to get $20 off your order. That's Jase, Jase medical.com. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild, where I was really stoked publishing highlight videos of Jonathan Kuminga. He's hitting threes. He put up a career high in scoring tonight with 28. Bravo, young man. Barely 21 years old. I'll start off with Kuminga's stat line real quick. His streak, I do love this. His streak of the Warriors staying undefeated when he plays 30-plus minutes intact. Kuminga played 29 minutes and 36 seconds tonight. Now, a lot of people can make the argument, and I was reading a lot of the chat and also on social media, just getting the feedback, getting the feel and vibe of the fan base in terms of how they felt about tonight's game. A lot of people felt Jonathan Kuminga should have played more. I don't blame you. He got pulled out in the fourth quarter when he was rolling. His three-point shot, thankfully, is starting to fall again. Remember, last year he was at 30. He was 37.5, a 30. We'll round up 38% three-point shooter. The dude can shoot, and he's gotten off to a slow start this year. But over the last two games, Kuminga's been 6 of 7 from beyond the arc. He was 2 of 3 from beyond the arc tonight. Was 10 of 18 from the field. Excuse me. And as I mentioned before, a career high for Kuminga with 28 points. But Steve Kerr, as he's done all year, and I don't think it's unfair to criticize him for the favoritism that he routinely is showing his veteran players. And what I mean by that specifically is Andrew Wiggins being reinserted into the starting lineup. There's obviously no complaints about that last game. You beat the Chicago Bulls. Granted, the Chicago Bulls are not exactly a team you should be celebrating a victory over, but the Bulls, especially given the Bulls are, as constructed, exactly the type of team that the Warriors are built to beat. But again, that was 2 years ago. Most teams are not like the Bulls now. Most teams are a lot longer. Most teams are a lot bigger, and that's what the Milwaukee Bucks were tonight. And Kuminga got pulled in the fourth quarter with Kerr going to his starting lineup, which included Andrew Wiggins. How do you justify that when Kuminga in the fourth quarter alone, never mind the fact that he had 28 points as a career high, in the fourth quarter, he scored 17 points on 5 of 7 shooting, a perfect 2 of 2 from beyond the arc. He was getting to the line in the fourth quarter with 5 free throw attempts, yet you pull him. Why? Like, how does that make sense? The only way it possibly makes sense is if the Golden State Warriors are trying to up the trade value of Andrew Wiggins. That's the only logic to this. There is no other logic. Okay, we're near the halfway point of the regular season right now. The Golden State Warriors are 3 games below 500. They're 18 and 21. We're at the 39 game mark. We're 2 games away from the midseason, literally. And what you see is what you get with Andrew Wiggins. So to continue giving him the amount of minutes he's getting, and I keep hearing a lot of media types and some fans saying, well, at least he's contributing defensively. I'm not even seeing that. Is he better than a lot of other players? Yes. But by his own standards a huge reason he's making $25 million a year. And that number is going to go up. I think it's at 24 and change this year, but in the final year of his contract, he's pulling in $30 million a year. And he plays 32 minutes tonight. And again, Wiggins is 3 of 13 from the field, which is not good, folks. That's actually really bad. All right. He missed 10 shots. He was 1 for 3 from beyond the arc, committed 3 personal fouls. For someone who the team was counting on for rebounding, in those 32 minutes, he grabs 4. Last game, he had 8 assists. He was involved much more offensively. Tonight, he has 1, and he finishes with 7 points. 7 in 32 minutes. How do you justify that? How is that possibly justifiable? So the only logic that makes sense is you're trying to up his value so you can get something back and not get completely screwed over in a trade. I don't know what else you could be doing that could justify it, because again, Wiggins will have the occasional game like yesterday against the Bulls. And even that was not like some, all-star level game. He had 17 points, did have 8 assists, which was cool, 5 rebounds, whatever. But again, the consistency has not been there. This is not someone who can string together consecutive games successfully. 7 points in 32 minutes. And it's pretty outrageous. So that's a negative. But Jonathan Kuminga, bravo kid, when you see him and you see the growth right before our eyes, I mean, imagine what he's going to look like just 2 years from now. And he's barely 21. He turned 21 in October. Imagine what he's going to look like 5 years from now. A few people in the chat were laughing at me when I said his ceiling is Jason Tatum. Are you still laughing? I really the style of play. He's a wing who could play the 4. He is a good shooter, contrary to what a lot of ignoramuses out there were saying about him early in his career. The kid can shoot. I've been saying on the show time and again, he reminds me a lot of Jimmy Chitwood from the movie Hoosiers, the protagonist in terms of the basketball players. His shooting form is almost identical. It's borderline perfect. It's just not normal looking because he relies so much on one hand, and it is very formulaic is not the right word. It's very fundamental, I guess you can say. Maybe that's the right way of putting it. The kid can shoot. The kid can do it all. I'm so excited Kuminga is on this team. He wasn't the only youngster, by the way, who was kicking ass tonight. Brandin Podziemski, who got 35 minutes in this game, had a fantastic game. Dr. J30 saying I make no sense. Why? Can you elaborate on that? I always make sense. So anytime you come here and say I don't, be specific, please, if you're going to hate. DRJ30 says scouts are not stupid. I'd like to rebut that by strongly disagreeing. If you knew who some of the scouts were in the NBA, you would not agree with yourself on that statement. So I don't know. A lot of scouts in the NBA are a joke. To put it in perspective, the Atlanta Hawks hired a scout last year who's now their assistant general manager, whose only experience in basketball was being a broadcaster for a couple of years. He was an actor. He happened to be roommates with the Atlanta Hawks GM, all about who you know. And he was a scout for a year, did nothing as a scout to show that he knows anything. Now is the assistant GM. Do not sit here and tell me and give credit to NBA teams. Just because someone hires someone into a position does not automatically make them qualified for anything. Anyway, so I just had to rebut that because that's ridiculous. Brandin Podziemski, just real fast, again, had a fantastic game, 23 points on the night. He was 10 of 14 from the field, 3 of 5 from beyond the arc, double-double for the kid. He tied a career high with those 23 points, 10 rebounds. The only part of his game that I think needs to progress are the assists. I mean, he is a point guard, and part of that is making your teammates better, involving them more. And to only have 3 assists in 35 minutes, I don't know if that cuts it. But 23 points, 10 rebounds for a rookie, awesome. Side note, in case you've missed me saying this in an earlier show, Jonathan Kuminga and Brandin Podziemski are the same age. So they're both 21. Or maybe I think Podziemski turns 21 next month. So they're a few months apart. But the future is bright for this Golden State Warriors team. And it wasn't just those two. that can make you incredibly that should make people incredibly encouraged about the Golden State Warriors. Wordman, by the way, saying that Podziemski looks off Kuminga every time. I haven't seen that. And they are actually close off the court. So if that is happening, it's unintentional, just in case you're wondering that. Those two have a close relationship. Kuminga gets along with everybody on the roster. That is one of the most encouraging things about this kid, among many things. He's not a bad chemistry guy. He just didn't like his head coach destroying his career, and he spoke out about it. And again, I'm sorry, I side with him. I don't believe in just keeping your mouth shut, regardless, no matter what. No, there are exceptions, and I support Kuminga in that regard. But Podziemski had, again, another fantastic game. But Kuminga and Podziemski weren't it. This team's youth shined tonight. And it wasn't just Trace Jackson Davis. I'm going to let you know what I mean in just a moment after I pay some bills. Thanks to our incredible sponsors. And let's start off with the first one, which is Jase Medical, which is all about giving you comfort in an anxiety-ridden world. Look, I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk just for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's some scary stuff. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if your significant other, your partner that you love, family members, parents, kids, imagine if they got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com. Again, Jase, Jase medical.com, and use the offer code LOCKED ON to get $20 off your order.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On has a national show. In fact, they just launched their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So it wasn't just Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga who lit it up. And believe me, I'm seeing in the chat a lot of criticism of the veterans. I'm going to get to them because there's a lot to break down from this game tonight. Stephen Curry did not play. Smart move, in my humble opinion, to rest him as the second half of a back-to-back. He's not getting any younger. He turns 36, I believe, on March 14th. Or was it March 12th? It's one or the other. So, it's good to preserve him. I actually thought this whole process and plan of preserving your veterans, your aging players, would have started a year ago, which is why a year ago is when I was losing my mind when we were seeing players like Kuminga and Moody rotting away on the bench in favor of players like Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome. I'm not forgetting that ever. So anyways, it was good to see Stephen Curry getting his rest tonight, and Brandin Podziemski started in his place. But there was another point guard on this roster who, when we talk about the future of this team, you got to start getting excited about him. His name is Lester Quinones. He's got a 2-year deal this year. I'm sorry, he's on a 2-way deal this year. And he's going to get almost certainly a guaranteed deal next year. This kid can play, folks. And look, the stat line is not going to show huge numbers tonight. All right, 6 points. Okay. 2 of 5 from the field, 40% shooting. All right. One of those shots, though, both in terms of attempts and makes, was a 3. He made his only 3-point attempt. Had had 1 trip to the free throw line, had 4 rebounds. For a point guard, he gives you size. Lester Quinones, let me see what he's listed as officially. I think he's around like, what, 6'3", 6'4"? Sorry, I don't have that in front of me right now. Here he is. Lester Quinones is listed as 6'4", 208, which is now officially his height. The NBA has updated those statistics so that if a player is listed as 6'4", he's actually 6'4". They're not measuring that with shoes. So he's big for his size as a point guard. The kid can defend. He can shoot. I think we saw the first glimpse of who he really could be as a player during the preseason. That was the first time I saw legitimate potential from this guy. And in 17 minutes tonight, again, not a great night. 6 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnover. But he led the team in net rating, +9. Good things were happening when he was on the court. And folks, the future is just awesome. There's going to be a backcourt someday soon of both Podziemski and Lester Quinones. God forbid if Steve Kerr is still the head coach at that point, but hypothetically, if he is, that's 2 of your 3-point guards on the court settled. I'm being totally facetious saying all that. But you got to be stoked about Lester Quinones. And Trace Jackson Davis, the rookie, he's going to be 24 years old soon, so not the youngest of rookies, but he's still a rookie. He's contributing. He played 18 minutes tonight. He was 6 of 8 from the field, had 12 points, just 2 rebounds. It's kind of a low number, but he was efficient. He had 2 blocks as well. So, folks, the future's bright. That's the good news. Now, the bad news, I already harped on Andrew Wiggins enough, all right? And it is funny. There's still people out there who think Steve Kerr is still the guy, who think Andrew Wiggins is still going to magically turn things around, even though we're at the halfway point of the NBA season. Newsflash, it's not going to happen. They got to trade this guy. And but there were other veterans on this team. And more specifically, I want to highlight one that just should not be playing. And that's Corey Joseph. What the heck? And I saw this in the chat a lot. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to Corey Joseph. He should not be playing. All right. The only time Corey Joseph should be playing is if there is absolutely no one else on this roster to play. I know the Warriors were short tonight with 9 men, but Lester Quinones was fine. There was no good reason to pull him. You could have given more minutes to Jonathan Kuminga. Again, 29 minutes, 36 seconds. You know who played more than him? Andrew Wiggins with 32 minutes, Dario Saric with 34 minutes, Klay Thompson with 35 minutes, Brandin Podziemski with 35 minutes. Jonathan Kuminga on the year is 7th on the team in minutes. You could have also gone bigger and not relied on your point guard crutch, meaning instead of getting Corey Joseph 18 minutes, 25 seconds tonight, you could have given minutes to one of your bigs, and the only big that I saw actually being effective defending Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I'm referring to Kevon Looney, who himself has had a difficult year, but he was playing good tonight. Yet we only saw him for 18 minutes. He was literally the only person out there effectively defending Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yet we only saw him for 18 minutes. And a lot of it, again, is because Steve Kerr his crutch is ball handling. He needs ball handlers out there. This was not a problem when Sean Livingston was on the roster, when Andre Iguodala was on the roster, when Draymond Green was healthy and playing, because those guys Kerr trusted handling the ball. They're also long and big and play defense. They're not liabilities out there. Corey Joseph is 6'2" with shoes on. He's a below average defender. He's a below average scorer. He's a ball handler. That's all he can do. But that is apparently the most important thing in Steve Kerr's world. Kevon Looney was actually playing good tonight. Anyways, so yeah. So I do feel like that criticism is warranted in terms of the minute distribution. Warriors could have won this game, folks. It was I'll give the Milwaukee Bucks credit. They are a damn good team. Chris Middleton was every single time the Warriors were starting to rally in this game, and you saw glimpses of hope in terms of the Warriors pulling off a huge upset, there was Chris Middleton making a huge bucket. There was Giannis Antetokounmpo making a huge bucket. Dame Lillard, a very quiet 27 points tonight. There was one play in particular with Wiggins, and I'll stop piling on him after this, but there was one play in the third quarter where he did a crossover that dropped Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton literally fell to the floor because Wiggins crossed him up. It was beautiful. And for a split moment there, it was actually like a flashback to the Wiggins of 2 years ago. Like, damn, that's the all-star that we've been missing. And all he had to do was make a 15-footer to complete the SportsCenter highlight. And of course, he not only bricked that shot, it clanked like 15 feet off the rim, 20 feet. Some rebounder got it way out on the perimeter. It was an easy transition three-pointer. It was a 5-point swing on that one play. It went from Wiggins being a highlight to Wiggins giving up a highlight. And that just symbolized this whole season when it comes to Andrew Wiggins. We're going to play some sound in just a moment. I'll see if there's anyone in the chat who has any questions. I'll try to get to that. But I'm going to cling to the optimism of the Warriors youth playing some damn good basketball tonight. The future is bright. And I got to give some love to Klay Thompson as well. I thought he looked pretty good too. We'll have more to discuss in just a moment. First, though, let's give some love to another one of our sponsors. Come on, man. Come on, Sobeys. Don't be saying trade Steph. Come on, man. Come on. We're not going to go there. First, let's give some love to our second sponsor of the evening. And that's the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network, FanDuel. Folks, for the record, if someone in the chat can enlighten me, because I have not had a chance to watch that Chiefs-Dolphins game. I actually do have a Peacock, so I could watch it. I watched it for a brief moment, but I was focused mostly on the Warriors game. Someone could tell me, who won. Please let me know. I don't even know that right now. We're recording this live. It is Saturday night, January 13th. Happy birthday, Dad. Looking forward to dinner tomorrow night. It's 8:07 p.m. right now. And I really hope if you made a bet with FanDuel, you won some money. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. It's already wrapped up. We're in the postseason now. The 49ers, the one that I care about, they play next week. Looking forward to finding out who their opponent is. But Chiefs-Dolphins was tonight. Do I have an answer yet in the chat? KC is beating Miami 26-7. All right, so just as I predicted. Good stuff. I hope you folks bet big on KC. I felt like that was thank you, Joe. I feel like that was an easy bet. And you could have made that bet with FanDuel. You could have made a million bets with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get 150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place just a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. Talk about an unbelievable promotion. An unbelievable promotion. I got tongue-tied there. The app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet. You can do live same-game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in their parlay hub. They have their own hub just for parlays. It's the best way to find popular parlays. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, one final segment of Locked On Warriors. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we're back at it Monday. That's a winnable game. They're playing the Memphis Grizzlies. That is one of the worst teams in the NBA, thanks in large part to injuries. They have no Ja Morant. Desmond Bane just got recently injured. They're obviously missing Brandon Clark, Steven Adams. That is a hapless team. If the Golden State Warriors don't win that, hoo boy. Yes, there is pressure on you, Golden State Warriors, to win that game. You have to win that game. That is one of the worst teams in the NBA. If you lose that game, call this season a wrap and start playing your youngsters 24/7 and trade the house, except for Stephen Curry. I will not endorse that ever. Let's go to some sound, and let's see who actually spoke on behalf of the Golden State Warriors following this game. Ooh, and Brandin Podziemski talking about chemistry. Why don't we start there? So here is Brandin Podziemski, who is from the area. So this was a hometown game for him. I don't know if that made any difference in terms of his production tonight. As I mentioned before, a career high for Brandin Podziemski, tied a career high, with 23 points. And let's hear Brandon talking about team chemistry. That's always interesting to me.
The energy is really feel like the spirit stuff, just flipping it around. Like, is it everyone sitting in the locker room talking about this as a team? Like, how do you flip it from not having the confidence, not caring to?
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy to me because, like, off the floor, like, we're probably the closest group that at least I've been around. And then on the floor, sometimes we get a little disconnected. So it's kind of new to me. But I think our leaders, Dre and Chris and Steph, do a good job of talking in the locker room and making it a point. But, you only can say so much, right? At the end of the day, it's on the people that are on the floor to go out and do it. And, if you don't have the energy and want and desire to do it, then, your team's going to suffer.
I need to process that a little bit. I feel like you said a lot of nuggets there that from a first listen, there's a lot going on there. Podziemski loves the off-court chemistry. That's a great sign. And I don't doubt that either. These players love each other. And I do agree with what he said, though, which is that on the court, they're having some issues. And that's where, from my perspective, coaching is a huge problem. Because a good coaching staff translates that off-court chemistry to a successful on-court product. But as we're seeing time and time and again, Steve Kerr has his favorites. That's not going to work. It might work if those favorites are at the peak of their power, if they're clear-cut leaders, both vocally and in terms of production. But when the veterans that you rely on, that you're playing favorites with, are no longer consistent, are not routinely producing as the best players on the court, that's a problem. Let's hear from Steve Kerr. I heard this soundbite during the postgame coverage before we started recording here. And I'm glad NBC Sports Bay Area put this on their social media. Here's Steve Kerr talking about where the Warriors are right now.
3/4 zone, especially in the second quarter, you limited them to like 20 something, like low in the 20s for points. What was the biggest change that you saw defensively compared to the past couple of games?
It's just how hard the guys were playing, and that's all we've talked about is the last few days. Is we clearly lost our belief and our spirit, our edge, whatever you want to call it, those last two home games of our homestand. And it was embarrassing for all of us. And I think, the last few days, that's what we've talked about. Our guys have played really hard the last two nights, and that's the standard that has been set here for a long time. And as long as we play that hard, I'm good with, whatever the results are. I think we'll give ourselves a chance to win every night when we compete like that.
3/4 zone, especially.
Yeah, I mean, look, the effort it's great to see your players putting up effort, but I used to hear rhetoric from Steve Kerr talking about championships, and if all you're happy about now is just effort, then where's the focus on the future? Why is there no concern about the Warriors a year from now, 2 years from now? Like, that's important stuff. That's part of coaching. It isn't just the now. Marco Siriano Palacios writes, wouldn't it be the best thing to focus on defense the rest of the year? Yeah, their defense is problema numero uno. Fix all the issues they have on the back end. No way they could go deep this year. I'm still potentially delusional in thinking that this Warriors team does have an outside shot of making some real noise. Fang USFU writes, Nate McMillan and the glove coaching would be awesome. Are we at a point where we're talking about who to replace Steve Kerr with? Genus writes, free Kuminga, Kerr sucks. We want Rajon Rondo as coach. So the discussion is starting. Yeah, G who writes, how has Lacob allowed Kerr to sabotage Kuminga this long? There's going to be some real talks after the season. There is a very good reason why Steve Kerr is on the final year of his deal, why he's a lame duck coach. Again, if the season does end up spiraling and they miss the playoffs or they're like a first round exit or they're a playing team. It doesn't even, whatever. If it's a disappointing finish to the season, my hunch is it'll be announced as retirement. We'll see Kerr back in the TNT booth, replacing Stan Van Gundy. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If we're talking about who should be the next head coach, Brent Barry's number one on my list. If we're going to touch the subject right now, and I don't know how you folks feel about it. I'll throw it out there right now. But besides Brent Barry, if Chris Paul does not have definitive plans to play beyond this year, and I've spoken to some folks about that because I was curious to know what if Chris Paul wants to continue playing. And I think there's a good chance after this season, he's as a free agent, he's going to try to find a team that he can chase a ring with, a la Gary Payton in the later years of his career. When I think Payton finally got a ring with the Miami Heat, but he was not a key part of that team. I can see Chris Paul doing something similar to that. But if Chris Paul does not, if the Warriors can convince him to be their next head coach, sign me up. That's honestly the top of my list is Chris Paul, but I just don't know if he wants to keep playing. Disfad Bridge writes, Brent Barry is a nobody. I don't know why you're saying that. He's a former champion. He's been in the front office of the Spurs for the last 5 years. Never mind the fact that his dad is Warriors legend Rick Barry. If you want to accuse me of having a little bias there, you're justified in saying so. But no, he's a very bright mind, and the Spurs have been grooming him to take over R.C. Buford's job, maybe Greg Popovich's job. I'm saying beat them to the punch, steal Brent Barry, and bring him in right now. Yeah, and Woodland Mac, you're right. Brent Barry also won a dunk contest. Rick Barry's progeny, man. How crazy is that? 5 sons. He has 6 kids total. A daughter and 5 sons. All 5 sons have played professional basketball. His youngest, Canyon, might represent the USA in 3-on-3 basketball next year. And if he wins a gold, that'll be the one son who gets a gold medal. Anyways, Drehan writes, JJ Redick would be a good coach. Bad Ombre writes, Quinn Snyder. I love Quinn Snyder. And he makes no sense with the Atlanta Hawks. That's a weird fit. Dave Main writes, where is Luke Walton? He's an assistant somewhere. I forgot the team off the top of my head, but I do agree. The assistant coaches on this team have been a colossal disappointment this year. What the F is Fashion writes, Kenny Atkinson is booty. I'm paraphrasing. See if there's any other. Oberon writes, Andre Iguodala as a head coach. I like how we're finishing up this show tonight with with a coach with next coaches. Wadner Gideon writes, Kerr is losing ground as a coach. Kuminga should have been playing the entire fourth quarter. I agree. Kuminga scored 17 points that final quarter. Why was he taken out? And of course, no one asked Steve Kerr that, of course. And if they did, then I apologize. But I didn't see anything indicating that anyone did. And I agree with Eddie757, who writes, Kerr won't get fired. Again, that's why I think my hunch is they're going to announce a retirement where, they just don't re-up his contract. So technically he's not fired. And then Steve Kerr, to save face, decides, dude, I've had an incredible 10-year run, 11 years, whatever it is. Mingsy writes, Mark Jackson. The only problem with that is Mark burned all his bridges with Joe Lacob. So Bark, it would shock me if Kenny Atkinson ends up getting that job. I think if Joe Lacob and ownership is unhappy with Steve Kerr, it's not. How could they be happy with Kenny Atkinson? The results have been just abysmal. Since Kenny Atkinson was elevated to the number 1 assistant, the defense has just plummeted. Any other name? Budenholzer? That doesn't excite me. Sam Cassell from Wordman? Yeah, wouldn't mind it. Any other names in here? Yeah, but Chris Paul is who I'm actually most excited for. Chris Paul and Brent Barry. Those are my those are my 2 names. Wadner, I appreciate you for the compliment. And Chris Mullen, former GM, by the way. I love Mully, man. I really love Mully in every regard, as a human being, as a basketball mind. Folks, we're back at this Monday night. Have a great rest of the weekend. Happy birthday, Dad. Bye-bye.